Some of the bottles labeled vinegar on your shelf were never fermented from anything. They're a lab chemical, synthetic acetic acid, watered down, tinted brown with caramel coloring, and shelved right next to the real thing. The malt vinegar on a lot of fish and chip counters isn't even allowed to call itself vinegar in Britain. By law, it has to say non-brewed condiment. And get this, real vinegar takes a double fermentation. Sugar turns to alcohol, then bacteria turn that alcohol into sour acid. And that takes weeks or years. The fakes skip every bit of it and stir together acid, water, sugar, and dye. Same shelf, same price, none of the work. So today we're walking through 6 vinegar brands to skip, and 3 that are actually real vinegar. If you're tired of being lied to, smash subscribe. You're going to want to share this one. Here's the thing about vinegar. Real vinegar starts as something you could name: wine, apples, malted barley, rice, and ferments twice until it's sour. That slow process is where the flavor, the color, and the character come from. A real wine vinegar tastes like wine gone tart. A real malt vinegar tastes of toasted grain. The fakes counterfeit all of that. They take a cheap or synthetic acid base and paint on the rest. Caramel coloring for the brown, sugar for the body, and natural flavor for the taste. So a few-day-old liquid can pose as something aged and specific. They borrow famous names: balsamic, sherry, champagne, malt, and slap them on bottles that never earned them. The words that tell you you're being shorted are a caramel color, added sugar, flavor, and the strange one, non-brewed. Once you spot them, the vinegar shelf splits in 2. Let's name names. Number 6 is the gourmet-looking pale bottle, white balsamic vinegar. It sits in the fancy section and sounds like a sophisticated cousin of regular balsamic. It's mostly an illusion. Look at the ingredient list. White balsamic is usually a plain, industrial white wine vinegar with sugar and a colorant added, cooked light instead of dark, so it stays golden and doesn't stain a dish. There's no decades-long barrel aging like real balsamic. True. It's a young, sweetened vinegar styled to look refined. You're paying a premium for sweetened white vinegar with a nicer name. It's not harmful and it tastes pleasant enough, but it's a dressed-up everyday vinegar charging gourmet prices for the costume. Pretty bottle, ordinary contents. Number 5 is the everyday cooking staple that's often been doctored: cheap red wine vinegar. Real wine vinegar is a wonderful thing, but the bargain bottles cut corners you can taste. Look at the ingredient list. The cheap versions are frequently rushed through fermentation in steel tanks in days, then propped up with caramel coloring to deepen the red and sulfates to stabilize it, instead of being matured in wood for a year or 2 like good wine vinegar. What makes this particularly telling is the color. If a red wine vinegar needs added caramel to look red, the wine wasn't doing the work. It's a thin, harsh, colored up version of a vinegar that can be genuinely great. It'll splash into a dressing fine. But it's a fast tinted imitation of real wine vinegar, and the flavor gap is obvious side by side. Number 4 is the one that sounds the most artisanal. Flavored and infused vinegars, the raspberry, fig, and garlic bottles with the pretty labels. Real fruit vinegar exists, and it's lovely. Most of these aren't it. Look at the ingredient list. A true raspberry vinegar is made by fermenting raspberry wine. The supermarket version is usually a cheap vinegar base with added sugar, natural and artificial flavor, and a splash of red dye to fake the fruit. So you're buying ordinary vinegar with candy flavoring stirred in, not fruit turned to vinegar. The picture of berries on the front is doing the work the berries never did. There's a place for a sweet, fruity splash. But if the fruit shows up as flavor and color instead of as actual fermented fruit, it's a flavored sugar vinegar wearing a farmer's market disguise. Number 3 is the pair with the most expensive sounding names: sherry vinegar and champagne vinegar. Those names promise a specific place and a long aging. The cheap bottles deliver neither. Look at the ingredient list. Real sherry vinegar comes from the Jerez region of Spain and is aged for years in barrels. Real champagne vinegar comes from the wine of that French region. But because those names aren't always protected on a US shelf, plenty of bottles are an ordinary white wine vinegar with a little flavoring and a fancy label, sold at a premium. You're paying for the romance of Spain or France and getting generic wine vinegar. The real kicker is the markup. You can pay triple for a name that, in the cheap bottles, means almost nothing about what's inside. If this is already saving you from a bad shop, do me a favor and hit subscribe. We publish one of these every week. Number 2 is the watered down one. Light or diluted vinegars and the preserved pickling bottles. These look like a deal or a convenience, and they quietly give you less vinegar and more additives. Look at the ingredient list. The elite and salad vinegars are cut with extra water down to a weaker acidity, so you're paying for a bottle that's part water by design. and some pickling and bulk vinegars add preservatives like sodium benzoate or sulfites and a shot of caramel color to keep them shelf stable and uniform. Extras that have no business in something that's supposed to be 2 ingredients. Bottom line, real vinegar doesn't need preservatives. It is a preservative. It's not dangerous. But you're either buying diluted vinegar or vinegar with a chemistry kit added, when the real thing is fruit or grain in time. And the worst of the bunch, number 1, never fermented anything at all. Non-brewed condiment and the imitation vinegars built the same way. This is the synthetic acid we opened with, the stuff on a lot of chip shop tables and in the cheapest jugs. Here's what it is. Instead of fermenting a food, makers start with synthetic acetic acid, historically even distilled from wood. Then add water, caramel coloring for the brown, and a little citric acid for bite. There's no wine, no malt, no apples, no fermentation, no mother. Dar-e, it's a flavored chemical wearing vinegar's clothes. And here's your overseas comparison. In Britain, the law won't even let them call this vinegar. It legally has to say non-brewed condiment, so shoppers know, just not here. And here's the kicker. Real vinegar is so easy to make that you can do it by accident. Leave a little leftover wine or cider in a jar with a splash of raw, unfiltered vinegar and some air. And in a few weeks, it turns to the real thing. We'll put the method in the description. When your vinegar is lab acid tinted with caramel, that's not vinegar, it's a chemical costume. And it's robbing you blind on something fruit in time make for almost nothing. Now the good news, because real vinegar, fermented twice from something you can name, is easy to find once you read labels. Number 3 is the accessible everyday hero. A real red wine vinegar, and a reliable one is Pompeian, a brand that's been doing Mediterranean staples since 1906. The whole point is what's not in it. Here's why it works. A real wine vinegar's ingredient list is wine vinegar. That's it, no caramel coloring and no added sugar. Made by fermenting actual wine until it's tart. The color comes from the wine, not a dye bottle, and the flavor has the rounded character the cheap doctored versions fake with additives. It's the honest version of the everyday bottle most kitchens already reach for. You'll find a real wine vinegar in any grocery store. Turn it over and check that it lists wine and nothing painted on. Real wine, real fermentation, real vinegar. Number 2 is the clean, traditionally brewed one from across the Pacific. Moroccan rice vinegar from a Japanese maker that's been brewing vinegar for centuries. Look for the genuine brewed, unseasoned bottle, not the sweetened sushi version. Here's why it works. Real rice vinegar is made by fermenting rice into alcohol and then into vinegar. Moroccan's genuine brewed version is rice and water turned sour with no added sugar, salt, or MSG. It's mild, clean, and slightly sweet on its own, the way real rice vinegar should be, which is exactly why the seasoned bottles have to add sugar and salt to fake it. Get the plain one and season it yourself. And if this ranking is useful, hit the like button. It really helped the channel cut through the algorithm. You'll find Moroccan in the international aisle of most grocery stores. Centuries of brewing experience and still only rice. And the best of the bunch, in number 1, genuine brewed malt vinegar, and the classic is Sarson's, brewed in Britain since 1794. This is what chip shop vinegar is supposed to be. Here's why it works. Real malt vinegar is made by malting barley, brewing it into an ale, and then letting that ferment into vinegar and age. Sarson's is brewed the traditional way, which is why it has that rich, toasty grain flavor a synthetic non-brewed condiment can never touch. One is fermented from actual barley. The other is acid and caramel. Side by side, it isn't close. You'll find Sarson's in the British or international section and online. And the bottle lasts forever. It's the centuries-old original that the chip shop fake spent all that effort imitating. This is malt vinegar that actually came from malt. The vinegar shelf is a battle between fermentation and a fake. Between wine, barley, apples, and rice, turned slowly sour, and a synthetic or watered-down acid painted with caramel, sugar, and flavor to look like the real thing. On one side, the white balsamic that's sweetened white vinegar, the sherry with no Spain in it, and the non-brewed condiment that never fermented anything. On the other, a real wine vinegar, a rice vinegar brewed for centuries, and a malt vinegar that actually came from malt. Remember the worst of what we saw, a synthetic acid-tinted brown, sold as vinegar in a country where it would be illegal to even use the word. And remember the best, barley brewed and aged the way it's been done since the 1700s. So here's the wisdom to take to the store. Read the ingredient list and look for a source. Real vinegar names what it's made from. Wine, malt, apples, rice, and keeps the list short. If you see caramel color, added sugar, flavor, or the words non-brewed, put it back. Real vinegar is fruit or grain in time. Everything else is acid and coloring in a costume. Drop the vinegar brand you still trust in the comments. We're building the list with you. Hit subscribe if this changed how you shop today. We'll see you in the next aisle.